this idea that you can have a cult, but it's not a destructive cult. I've heard this messaging from other people in the cult space, that it's not just about whether it's a cult, it's about whether it's destructive. And my question here is really, what are your thoughts on, is this, over time, has the meaning of the word cult changed or been diluted? Because it seemed before that cult itself, sort of just the word cult, kind of represented all of the three items that you just listed, that if you're a cult, that meant you're a destructive cult. How did we get to a place where you can be a cult, but not a destructive cult? If the question makes sense.
Okay, Aaron, what we're looking at then is such things as cult branding, cult following. That's different. So, for example, you have Taylor Swift. She has her Swifties. You have the old group, the Grateful Dead, and they had a following called the Deadheads. You have people that just absolutely are completely on board with Trader Joe's, and they always go shopping at Trader Joe's, or they're devoted to Apple products. And you could even say that certain corporate leaders, like when Steve Jobs was alive and leading Apple, that he was a kind of corporate cult leader. But there was a mindset that he promoted within the corporate culture of Apple. Mm-hmm. But he was paying people large salaries, giving them stock options, benefits. He wasn't really hurting people, and he was providing a product that the public used and wanted. So I think it's possible to have a cult following or be a kind of celebrity that people are, enthralled with and has a following, but yet not really be using thought reform or coercive persuasion in such a way that you're damaging people's lives. Yeah. So it is possible to have, in that sense, a benign cult. And then how do you measure whether or not a cult leader, and that's the single most salient feature of a destructive cult, is that all-powerful leader who is totalitarian, who has no accountability. How do you measure what that leader is doing? I think you look at Lifton's book, Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism. You look at those 8 criteria, such as milieu control, social isolation, or the demand for purity, or the loaded language filled with thought-terminating cliches. You go down that list of 8 and identify what is being done in that particular group and to what extent it's being done. And then also Edgar Schein, who was a professor of psychology at MIT, he wrote the book Coercive Persuasion. And there are 3 stages to coercive persuasion. Schein would describe the first stage as unfreezing. I would call it breaking people down. Second, you change them. And after you've broken them down and they're in this state of brokenness, and they're saying, please, somebody help me to survive, help me to get better. And then you come with your formulated program and you say, this is the way to make you whole. This is the way to fix you. And you take it and you embrace it as a way out of the distress that you're now in. And then finally, Schein would say, comes the refreezing stage. And that is basically what I would call locking it in, locking it down. And how do you do that? That is in large part achieved through peer reinforcement, social isolation, where you're not really hearing other views, alternative ideas, and everyone in the group, which becomes your world that you inhabit, they're constantly reinforcing that change and whatever the group indoctrination is. So I think if you look at that, and then you can also read Robert Cialdini's book Influence.
What's his last name?
Pardon?
What's his last name?
Cialdini.
Okay.
Cialdini. N.I., Cialdini. He was a professor of psychology at Arizona State University, and he wrote a seminal book, Influence. And in that book, he identified the 6 principles of influence and how they could be used for good or for bad. For example, authority. We will obey people that we perceive to be in authority. Or liking, which is the basis of celebrity endorsements. We will buy something that's suggested by someone we like, or we will accept the guidance of people that we like. And that kind of couples with what we talk about in the cult phenomenon as love bombing. That is seemingly unconditional affection and regard when you become involved in the group, in order for you to like the people in the group and therefore be more malleable, be more responsive to what they want from you. And it's a form of manipulation, because for the people that are love bombing you, they understand that it's highly conditional, and that their affection, their love of you is going to be withdrawn if you don't follow the path that they want you to follow.
That makes sense. I remember the first time I heard you mention the 3 steps of coercive persuasion, according to Robert Lifton: unfreezing, changing, and refreezing. And I was comparing those steps to the introductory routes into Scientology and then the major courses in Scientology. And I was struck by the fact that, in my opinion, someone has already gone through all of these steps. You have already entered refreezing by the time you've taken your first major Scientology course. And that's pretty remarkable. And again, I don't know how that compares to the onboarding experience of other cults, but to think that by the time you've taken your first major course in Scientology, you've already gone through all the steps of coercive persuasion was something that stuck in my head the first time I heard you describe those steps.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.